All right, you can start.
Thank you. Hi everyone, welcome to Group 10's PowerPoint presentation. My colleague Shaniqua Rogers and I will be delving deeper into Chapter 15 of Richard Daft's textbook entitled The Leadership Experience. The title of the chapter that we'll be focusing on is Leading Change. After going through this PowerPoint presentation, you should be able to recognize social and economic pressures for change in today's organizations, implement the 8-stage model of planned major change, and use everyday strategies for gradual change, expand your own and others' creativity and facilitate organizational innovation, use techniques of communication, training, and participation to overcome resistance to change, and effectively and humanely address the negative impact of change. Now, let's talk about why change is important. Change is inevitable, and the increased pace of change in today's global environment has led to even greater problems for leaders struggling to help their organizations adapt. A major factor in the failure of organizations to adapt to changes in the global environment is the lack of effective change leadership. Leaders who can successfully accomplish change typically define themselves as change leaders. They describe a vision for the future in vivid terms and articulate values that promote change and adaptability. Change leaders are courageous, are capable of managing complexity and uncertainty. They believe in followers' capacity to assume responsibility for change and learn from their own mistakes. Change is important because it fosters growth and ensures success. It improves organizational efficiency. It helps avoid disruptive and costly mistakes. It allows employees to learn new skills and explore new opportunities, and it contributes to overall success and sustainability. Now, let's play a quick game of Guess That Leader. So do you all have any idea who this person is? If you have any idea, if you've seen her face around, if you've seen her on the news or even on Facebook or LinkedIn, you can send a thumbs up. If you don't know who she is, that's fine as well. I'll let you know in a short bit. But she is a Trinidadian, and she's also one of the former executives of a major company in Trinidad and Tobago. I came to know of her in 2023 when she made the public aware of some pretty disturbing but kind of interesting news. So this is Angelique Pariso-Potters. She was Massey's general counsel and the former executive vice president of business integrity. So during one of Massey's annual general meeting, Angelique revealed that executives of Massey Holdings were spending tens of thousands of US dollars on sending executives to Florida so that they can learn about witchcraft. She said the bizarre rituals included that the organizers can train Massey employees to communicate with the dead and that attendees can self-heal with white light energy. So, after Angelique revealed this, Massey Holdings initiated a disciplinary process to review her conduct and determine how it should be handled responsibly yet decisively. After revealing this information, Angelique eventually resigned. So I would like you to put yourself in Angelique's position and ask yourself, if you are an executive at a major company and you're getting paid, let's say, $50,000 to $80,000 per month, would you keep this information a secret, or would you reveal it in the name of integrity so that it can bring about change not only within the organization but in the world? So I think that's something to think about. I actually follow Angelique on LinkedIn. A few days after she made this information available to the public, the Express newspaper did an article about her and they entitled it Fearless Angelique. I think she's a great person to look up to, and so that's why I follow her on LinkedIn and on social media. So now I will pass you all over to Shaniqua so that she can tell us a little bit more about the characteristics of leaders.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of leaders. The characteristics of leaders who can accomplish successful change projects. They define themselves as change leaders rather than people who want to maintain the status quo. They demonstrate courage. They believe in employees' capacity to assume responsibility. They are able to assimilate and articulate values that promote adaptability. They recognize and learn from their own mistakes. They are capable of managing complexity, uncertainty, and ambiguity. They have vision and can describe their vision for the future in vivid terms.
Thank you.
Leaders serve as the main role models for change and provide the motivation and communication to keep change efforts moving forward. Strong, committed leadership is crucial to successful change, and research has identified some key characteristics of leaders who can accomplish successful change projects. These characteristics include they define themselves as change leaders rather than people who want to maintain the status quo. They demonstrate courage. They believe in employees' capacity to assume responsibility. They are able to assimilate and articulate values that promote adaptability. They recognize and learn from their own mistakes, and they are capable of managing complexity, uncertainty, and ambiguity. And they have vision and can describe their vision for the future vivid terms.
Thank you. So now we'll be talking about the 8 stages of planned change. When leading a major change project, it is important for leaders to recognize that the change process goes through stages. Each stage is important and each may require a significant amount of time. Leaders are responsible for guiding employees and the organization through the change process. To successfully implement change, leaders pay careful attention to each stage, skipping stages or making critical mistakes at any stage can cause the change process to fail. So at stage 1, leaders establish a sense of agency that change is really needed. Crises or threats will throw resistance to change. Consider the situation at Volkswagen, Europe's largest automaker. This was kind of a wild situation. They were already stumbling as a result of weak sales, high costs, and an overcapacity of more than a million cars a year. Volkswagen spiraled into crisis after accusations that executives solicited bribes, they siphoned money into fake companies, and guess what? They arranged visits to prostitutes using company funds. Wolfgang Bernhard, who was brought in to lead a transformation, was getting support for many of his efforts because employees knew the organization had serious problems and might not survive without change. In many cases, though, there is no obvious crisis, and leaders have to make others aware of the need for change. Leaders carefully scan the external and internal environment, looking at competitive conditions, market position, social, technological, and demographic trends, profit and loss operations, and other factors. After identifying potential crises or problems, they find ways to communicate the information broadly and dramatically. Stage 2 involves a coalition with enough power to guide the change process and then develop a sense of teamwork among the group. For the change process to succeed, there must be a shared commitment to the need and possibilities for organizational transformation. Middle management change will seek top leader support in the coalition. It is also essential that lower level executives become involved. Mechanisms such as offsite retreats can get people together and help them develop a shared assessment of problems and how to approach them. Stage 3 requires developing a vision and strategy. Leaders are responsible for formulating and articulating a compelling vision that will guide the change effort, then developing the strategies for achieving that vision. A picture of a highly desirable future motivates people to change. In stage 4, leaders use every means possible to widely communicate the vision and strategy. At this stage, the coalition of change agents should set an example by modeling the new behaviors needed for employees. They must communicate about the change at least 10 times more than they think necessary. Transformation is impossible unless a majority of people in the organization are involved and willing to help, often to the point of making personal sacrifices. So now I'll pass it on to Shaniqua to tell us about stages 5 through 8.
Okay. Stage 5 involves powering employees throughout the organization to act on the vision. This means getting rid of obstacles to change, which may require revising systems, structures, or procedures that hinder or undermine the change effort. People are empowered with knowledge, resources, and discretion to make things happen. At stage 6, leaders generate short term wins. Leaders plan for visible performance improvements, enable them to happen, and celebrate employees who were involved in the improvements. Major changes takes time and transformation effort loses momentum if there are no short-term accomplishments that employees can recognize and celebrate. A highly visible and successful short-term accomplishment boosts the credibility of the change process and renews the commitment and enthusiasm of employees. Stage 7 keeps up with the urgency, building on the credibility and momentum achieved by short term wins to tackle bigger problems. Successful change leaders don't simply declare victory after small wins and become complacent. They use courage and perseverance to give people the energy and power to take on more difficult issues. This often involves changing systems, structures, and policies, hiring and promoting people who can implement the vision, and making sure employees have the time, resources, and authority they need to pursue the vision. Leaders at one company striving to improve collaboration. Stage 8. Stage 8 is where leaders can make the changes stick. The transformation isn't over until changes have well established roots. Leaders instill new values, attitudes, and behaviors so that employees view the changes not as something new, but as a normal and integral part of how the organization operates. They use many of the ideas we discussed in for changing organizational structure, such as tapping into people's emotions, telling vivid stories about the new organization and why it is successful, selecting and socializing employees to fit the desired culture, and acting on the impulse value so that people know what leaders care about and reward. Next, leading everyday change. Sometimes leaders see the significant changes that needs to be made, but they are constrained by various circumstances from initiating bold changes, or they recognize that aggressive moves would provoke strong resistance. In addition, the nature of leadership means influencing others in many small ways on a regular basis. Good leaders work daily to gradually shift attitudes, assumptions, and behaviors toward a desired future. When individual leaders throughout the organization are involved in daily change, they have a powerful cumulative effect. Leaders and learn strategies Leaders can learn strategies, for everyday change that will have significant constructive impact as everyday conversations and small actions spread to others throughout the organization. Each of the strategies below would be described by Trisha.
Thank you. So let me tell you a bit about the noise. They decided to do some housework today of all days. But each of the strategies are described for change are described here now. First, we have creative self-expression. This is the least conspicuous way to promote change and involves a single leader acting in a way that others will notice and that reflects the value or behaviors he or she wishes to install in followers. Creative self-expression quietly unsettles others' expectations and routines, whether it be a leader who wears casual pants and sweaters in an organization where most people wear suits, or a leader who shifts working hours to balance work and family life. Then we have right words. With this strategy, a leader turns an opponent's negative attitudes, comments, or behaviors into opportunities for change that others will notice. And thirdly, we have right opportunities. A more public approach is to look for, create, and capitalize on opportunities for motivating others to change. One woman, who was hired as a division president at a technology company, was opposed to the company's prevailing command and control leadership style, but knew she would make enemies by attacking it directly. She focused on leading her own division in a participative way and sharing as much power and authority with followers as she could. Moreover, when she was asked to make presentations to the company's executive staff, she passed the opportunity to those who had worked directly on the project. The employees gained greater skills and experience, and other executives were able to see and recognize their abilities and contributions.
Okay. The creative organization. Leaders can build an environment that encourages creativity and helps the organization be more innovative. Five elements of innovative organizations are alignment, creative values, unofficial activity, diverse stimuli, and within company communication. Alignment. For creative acts that benefit the organization to occur consistently, the interests and actions of everyone should be aligned with the organization's purpose, vision, and goals. Leaders make clear what the company stands for, consistently promote the vision, and clarify specific goals. In addition, they make a commitment of time, energy, and resources to activities that focus people on innovation. Many organizations set up separate creative departments or venture teams. Second, creative values. Most people have a natural desire to explore and create, which leads them to want to initiate creative activities on their own. Unfortunately, this desire is sometimes squelched early in life by classroom teachers who insist on strict adherence to the rules. Leaders can unleash deep-seated employees' motivation for creativity and innovation. Leaders encourage an entrepreneurial spirit by instilling values of risk taking and exploration and providing the structures and systems that encourage people to explore new ideas. This corporate entrepreneurship can produce a higher than average number of innovations. One important outcome is to facilitate idea champions. Idea champions are people who passionately believe in an idea and fight to overcome natural resistance and convince others of its value. Change does not happen by itself. Personal energy and efforts are needed to successfully promote a new idea. Champions make sure valuable ideas get accepted and carried forward for implementation. Next, unofficial activity employees need to be able to experiment and dream outside of their regular job descriptions. Leaders can give people free time for activities that are not officially sanctioned. One study of creativity found that in almost every case, yes, found that in almost every case, the essence of the creative act came during the unofficial time period. Dream time is what makes it possible for companies to go where they never expected to. The best known example is 3M's Post-it notes, one of the five most popular 3M products and one that resulted from an engineer's free time experiments with another worker's failure. A not very sticky glue, 3M lets employees spend 15% of their time on any project of their own choosing without management approval. Lastly, no, not lastly, sorry. Diverse stimuli. It is impossible to know in advance what stimulus will lead any particular person to come up with a creative idea. The seeds of the idea for post-it notes were planted when an engineer bookmarks kept falling out of his church hymnal. Leaders can help provide the sparks that set off creative ideas. Leaders can also provide employees with diverse stimuli by rotating people into different jobs, allowing them time off to participate in volunteer activities, and giving them opportunities to mix with people from themselves. Organizations can give people opportunities to work with customers, suppliers, and other outside industries. Trisha?
Thank you. So now we're going to talk about implementing change. Leaders frequently see innovation, change, and creativity as a way to strengthen the organization, but many people view change only as painful and disruptive. A critical aspect is understanding that resistance to change is natural and that there are often legitimate reasons for it. So, why do employees resist change? The underlying reason why employees resist change is that it violates the personal compact between workers and the organization. Personal compacts are the reciprocal obligations and commitments that define the relationship between employees and organizations. They include such things as job tasks, performance requirements, evaluation procedures, and compensation packages. These aspects of the compact are generally clearly defined and may be in writing and may be in written form. Other aspects are less clear cut. So, what are some tools to implement change? First, communication and training. Open and honest communication is perhaps the single most effective way to overcome resistance to change because it reduces uncertainty and it gives people a sense of control, it clarifies the benefits of the change, and builds trust. In one study of change efforts, the most commonly cited reason for failure was that employees learned of the change from outsiders. 2. Participation and involvement. Participation involves followers in helping to design the change. Although this approach is time consuming, it pays off by giving people a sense of control over the change activity. They come to understand the change better and become committed to its successful implementation and adoption of new computer technology at two companies. For example, a study of the implementation and adoption of new computer technology showed a much smoother implementation process at the company that introduced the change using a participatory approach. Thirdly, we have coercion. As a last resort, leaders overcome resistance by threatening employees with the loss of jobs or promotions or by firing or transferring them. Coercion may be necessary in crisis situations when a rapid response is needed. For example, a number of top managers at Coca-Cola had to be reassigned or let go after they refused to go along with a new CEO's changes for revitalizing the sluggish corporation. Coercion may also be needed for administrative changes that flow from the top down, such as downsizing the workforce, which we are going to talk about in the next slide. However, as a general rule, this approach to change is not advisable because it leaves people angry at leaders and the change may be sabotaged. Leadership and downsizing. Downsizing is one of the most difficult situations leaders face. They have to handle the layoffs in a way that eases the pain and tension for departing employees and maintains the trust, morale, and performance of employees who remain within the organization. Downsizing refers to intentionally reducing the size of a company's workforce. During the boom years of the 1990s, few, few leaders had to be concerned with need for laying off employees, but the economic downturn of the early 2000s made massive downsizing a common practice in American corporations. A number of techniques can help leaders smooth the downsizing process and ease tensions for employees who leave as well as those who remain. Some leaders seem to think that the less said about a pending layoff, the better, but that is not true. Leaders should provide advance notice with as much information as possible, even when they're not certain about exactly what is going on. Leaders should be as open and honest with employees as possible. Leaders can also involve employees in shaping the criteria for which jobs will be cut or which employees will leave the company. Another option is to offer incentive packages for employees to leave voluntarily and offer alternative work arrangements such as job sharing and part-time work. Providing assistance to displaced workers such as through training programs, severance packages, extended benefits, or placement assistance and counseling services for both employees and their families can ease the trauma associated with job loss. In conclusion, major changes can be particularly difficult to implement, but leaders can help to ensure a successful change effort by following the 8-stage model of planned change. That is, to establish a sense of agency, create a powerful coalition, develop a compelling vision and strategy, communicate the vision, empower employees to act, generate short-term wins, keep up the energy and commitment to tackle bigger problems, and institutionalize the change in the organizational culture. Leaders also facilitate change on a daily basis by using several everyday change strategies, including creative self-expression, right words, and right opportunities. Leading for innovation is a significant challenge for today's leaders, but one way is by creating an environment that nourishes creativity in particular departments or the entire organization. 5 elements of innovative organizations that we spoke about were alignment, creative values, unofficial activity, diverse stimuli, and within company communication. These correspond to characteristics of creative individuals. Creative people are less resistant to change, although some people demonstrate more creativity than others. Research suggests that everyone has roughly equal creative potential. Leaders can increase individual creativity by facilitating brainstorming, lateral thinking, and creative intuition. Implementation is a critical aspect of any change initiative, and leaders can understand why people resist change and how to overcome resistance. Leaders use communication and training, participation and involvement, and as a last resort, coercion to overcome resistance. Leaders should recognize that change can have negative as well as positive consequences, and one of the most difficult situations leaders may face is downsizing. They can use techniques to help ease the stress and hardship for employees who leave, as well as maintain the moral and trust of those who remain. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. I hope you all enjoyed, and here are our references at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.